here's what you missed in Marvel's Secret Invasion Episode 3.
Super Skrulls.
So to kick this episode off, we actually confirm a huge question at the end of last episode: does Fury know about his wife? And the opening makes it very clear yes he does, with him even saying to her in a flashback,
"This new face of yours is
beautiful."
So it's safe to say yes, he 100% knows, and he almost immediately uses the same trick he used on Talos at the beginning of the show, where you ask a question and it's not even what they say, it's what they don't say that gives it away.
Tell me something I don't know.
And he just straight up asks her.
You been in touch with Gravik while I was gone?
Making it clear he knows exactly what's going on here. And if that wasn't enough, she literally gets a call from Gravik's team.
I don't have that information at hand right now.
And at this point, you can tell Fury knows. And in this episode, we finally get confirmation and a name drop of Super Skrulls.
Now we no longer just change faces. We change powers.
Super Skrulls.
And we even get to see a little bit of the power set with Extremis later in the show. And this is actually a big deal because last we heard there had not been any successful harvests, which is what they're calling the acquisition of these superhero powers.
Gravik has given me multiple locations for the harvest, all of them empty.
There hadn't been a successful one the whole time they'd been searching, and then now all of a sudden Gravik has Extremis powers. Although I don't know if they're fully formed yet, we'll talk about that a little bit later on. And make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, otherwise you're gonna miss out on a ton of super high quality Marvel content. I mean, if that's fine by you, be my guest, but if it's not fine by you, make sure you hit the subscription and ring the bell down below. And that opening monologue from Gravik is big because he actually reconfirms what Talos said in the first episode.
If he succeeds, your species will cease to exist.
I'll invite you to join me in the extinction of the human race.
And something I wanted to call out here in case you guys missed it, because it actually took me a second, is the guy on the sub who is clearly impersonated by somebody is actually impersonated by Gravik's second-hand man. You only really get to see this explicitly when they're handing out the dossiers. And then we get to one of my favorite parts of the episode, which is this entire exchange between Kingsley Ben-Adir and Ben Mendelsohn.
I like a little bit of espresso with my sugar.
Man, this set of scenes is just awesome.
All day long.
Honestly, the acting in episode 3 is on par with last episode's, and that's saying something. I've been really impressed by this show, and everything in here, from the lines about generals and soldiers.
Well, it wouldn't be proper, would it? A general challenging his subordinate to knights.
All the way up to this moment when Talos grabs Gravik and everyone turns into Gravik. Which actually reminded me a lot of the scene in Sherlock when Irene Adler sets the location of a meeting to her favorite restaurant and then Moriarty just owns everybody in the restaurant already.
Is that why you chose to meet here in a public place?
Super ominous and creepy. So for Talos to see that and then still wind up stabbing him in the hand was insane. I mean, say what you want about Talos, but this guy's Braveheart. Now there's a few things here that are super easy to miss that I want to call out. The first one being pretty obvious, and that's the Extremis power. So Gravik makes it a point not to show this in front of Talos, but after he gets stabbed in the hand, he pulls his hand off, as opposed to just pulling the knife out like a normal person. And then he uses the Extremis ability, which we saw briefly in Shang-Chi. But it's mostly from Iron Man 3 and everyone's favorite glow stick villain, Aldrich Killian.
But something tells me now there's a new genius on the throne.
And this is our first actual example of Super Skrulls in the MCU. Now, Gravik says earlier in the show,
Now we no longer just change faces. We change powers.
that they copy powers, but I don't know if they copy powers the way that he's saying. It doesn't seem like they can just see them and copy them, unless what Gravik did is alter his DNA to be able to copy anything. But the coolest thing I noticed in this entire episode is actually right as Ben Mendelsohn or Talos leaves this meeting, he gets basically shoulder checked by this guy with the white hair, and this is actually Gaia. And you can see Gaia literally hands him the phone.
I believe this is yours.
Thank you.
And is like, yo, take this, so that way they can contact later in the episode. And then she tries to book it back to the car. That's why she's outside the car instead of inside the car. And you can see the guy that she screamed walking away on a phone call. And Gravik's kind of like, wait, what's going on here, dude? He's catching on. I feel bad for Gaia, but he's catching on. And one of my most favorite things about Secret Invasion as a series is it's giving us a darker side of Nick Fury. Like, this is definitely the same Nick Fury who made proper use of Natasha's skill set, and it just shows us a much more willing to get stuff done side of Fury. Like, we've always heard that Fury took care of business, but now we can see him making the decisions he has to quickly. Like, Talos sees this room and completely avoids it. Fury sees this room and is like, oh, boom, leverage. It gives me a much more Sonya Falsworth style energy, and I'm here for it. And speaking of Gaia, next up, basically we get her big hero scene, where she gets the call from Talos and then runs directly to the back room, which she talked about in episode 2.
Tracking pods?
Most of their identities are kept secret, even from us.
And here we see a couple of the main key characters. We get the British Prime Minister and the Fox News anchor, and they're even keeping somebody upside down here, and I don't know who this could be. But it just goes to show you pretty much everybody who's a Skrull is scrimmed from somebody else. Now the big question is, why isn't Everett Ross in this room, and where is Gravik's scrim? Where's Gaia's scrim? There's a couple of characters, key characters that are missing here. So there's gotta be yet another back room. But after Gaia winds up getting the password for Talos, they avoid the catastrophic strike on the UN plane, and we get this ominous line from Talos.
Okay, now run.
And just as we feel like Gaia has made her escape, we realize there's no guards at the exit and that Gravik has been waiting for her the whole time. The whole thing was a setup just to get Gaia out. And what I thought was really interesting about this scene is that Gravik doesn't use his newfound Super Skrull powers. He just uses human weapons, which seems so off-brand for him.
I see you, all dressed up in the man's finery, drinking the man's wine.
I can't even tell if he's upset that she's betrayed him. Homeboy just looks like vacant. And on top of everything else here, this episode actually leaves us with a few loose ends. Like, is Priscilla / Vara going to bring the gun to kill Fury? Because that's definitely what she's supposed to do, right? Not only that, if Gaia is actually dead, then what is this scene from the trailer? My gut reaction here is that this probably wasn't a fake out. I mean, they definitely killed the Skrull version of Gaia, but maybe the girl she's scrimming is somehow gonna be a character in the show. I don't know. I feel like there's more going on here than meets the eye. Now, seeing as we're halfway through Secret Invasion at this point, I wanted to stop and give it a little bit of a rating. For me, honestly, I'm really enjoying this as a Disney Plus show. It being so much darker, more gritty, and political than most of the other Marvel content, aside from maybe Winter Soldier or Civil War, strikes a really good core with me. My only real complaint with the show is I feel like it's edited somewhat poorly. It seems shot and written pretty well. I just don't like some of the editing decisions that they're making. The way they handled Maria Hill was fine, but the way they handled Gaia just felt, I don't know, rushed. But all the acting out of Samuel L. Jackson and Ben Mendelsohn, and especially Kingsley Ben-Adir, has been top notch. Some of the most intense one-on-one scenes we've seen in the MCU in a long time have come right out of these 3 episodes, and some of the obvious nods they're making to other films, like the Sherlock Holmes reference we talked about earlier, is just really cool to see. And the last thing I want to touch on here is my Is Rhodey a Skrull theory. If you missed that video, I'll put a link in the top right corner, but we didn't wind up getting anything in relation to that at all this week. No shots of Rhodey, no references to the White House, nothing political at all. This was all in-field operative stuff. But so far, of all the characters we've touched on in the whole show, I think Rhodey is definitely the best candidate to be a Skrull. There are people from the wider MCU that I think might have a better chance, but they haven't been in Secret Invasion at all. And like I said, if you're interested in Secret Invasion, go check out that video because we break the whole thing down there. Thank you for watching another Secret Invasion video. As always, this has been Got Culture, and subscribe if you enjoyed.